So I'm going to assume that Jacqueline Caldwell for the Court of Appeals hasn't won. Maybe she's at her victory party, but she hasn't posted anything about, I won, everybody. So we're going to have justice. So Jacqueline Caldwell for the Court of Appeals, this spanned like 20 different counties. The Court of Appeals, the second, the appellate court between the trial court and the Supreme Court. So the second powerful court, the second most powerful court in Kentucky. There's 14 versus 7, something like that. There's like double digits with the appeals and then single digits with the Supreme Court. So I had asked her on May 17th, just after noon, is corporal punishment illegal in Kentucky? And Jacqueline Caldwell for the Court of Appeals says, so long as it is not abusive, for example, causes an injury or leaves a bruise, then corporal punishment is not illegal in Kentucky. Now, she had waited a minute to answer that. It took maybe several hours or the next day. So I was actually surprised that she even answered it. Then I went ahead and I said, thank you for responding. I have a broader question. What is Kentucky law? Is common law a part of that? I figure if I read the U.S. Constitution and Kentucky Constitution, the state and federal code, then that covers most of Kentucky law. I also believe that hallmark Supreme Court cases, state and federal, are also a part of Kentucky law. Am I missing anything? And then she said, sorry about that too. I looked on Facebook and didn't realize it was still open for my husband's page. So that last response was from me, laugh out loud. I have no idea what the hell she's talking about there. It makes me think she made a comment and then deleted it and then apologized, because it doesn't really, it's not consistent with the narrative. I went ahead and I asked her, or I want to say a little bit more, because she didn't answer my Kentucky law question. What is Kentucky law? You're telling me you're a judge and you can't tell me what Kentucky law is? They're nonpartisan races, so they can't speak about the issues, but they can talk about, prosecuting. They could talk about civil procedure, having a fair court, believing in the rule of law, so even police officers who commit crimes would get arrested. And they could talk about their interpretation of the law, because there's so many goddamn fucking laws out there. Not only do the Constitution, the state code, and the, U.S. code and the U.S. Constitution, but the legislature is always passing brand new laws all the goddamn time, so you have to get an update on the entire, document and read over it all. It's just too many laws. I guarantee you that most lawyers and judges do not know all of the laws of the land. So knowing their interpretation is vital. That is crucial. How do you interpret the law? Do you take common law into effect? Do you say Kentucky law is supreme? Do you say, that the Bill of Rights of Kentucky and the United States Constitution are combined together? How do you interpret the law? What is Kentucky law? That is a fair question. She didn't respond to that, said that weird message, so I just said, I'm impressed that you're actually okay with connecting to the common people. Many politicians running for statewide positions seem to have contempt for the people they're trying to rule over, so I'm genuinely impressed. And I also understand that judge races can't be partisan, so most political issues can't be discussed. With that said, some areas you could talk on and on about: your interpretation of law, civil procedure, fairness in the courtroom, and a belief in the rule of law, for example. And she had a response to that. She said, I have to laugh a little at your connecting to the common people comment. I am common people, right? I'll comment on that in a second. I mean this sincerely. I've worked very hard to have what I have, but materially speaking, it is not a lot. I've spent the better part of my practice helping others, somewhat to my own detriment, but I am rewarded in other ways. And while I am running for this seat because I truly believe I am the right person for the job and have the background that is needed at the Kentucky Court of Appeals right now, and also think we could do way better than going back to who we had before, this is not all altruistic. I really want to win this race because I think I would really love doing the job. You don't know what you don't know, and what I had no idea about when I went into law is how much I would thoroughly enjoy the legal research and finding the compelling argument for each side of the case. As for my judicial philosophy, I'll quote brighter minds than mine to present my view. My judicial philosophy is fidelity to the law. Justice Sonia Sotomayor. I think it is the first duty of the justice to remove his own moral, philosophical, political, and religious beliefs, and not to think of himself as some great philosopher king and apply his own ideology. A judge's job is to be objective, conscientious, diligent, and remember always that every person is equal before the law. Justice Potter Stewart, so she quoted all that. Also, if you find me on Ballotpedia, I have answered some of that survey, not all because a bit of it was a little silly for me to take on the day I was doing it. Also, what county are you in? I haven't been to all of them in my district yet, but will multiple times between now and November, so maybe we can meet. Now, back to work. So, now in November, so the election is still going on. Is that saying that the election actually didn't happen? Because there's a district judge, circuit court, family court, in the different areas. So this is actually sounding like she has another, 4 or 5 months of campaigning. So I'll check out that thing in Ballotpedia. She answered, something really well. This is very heartfelt, and she's sitting there saying that she has, essentially done what was right and good, and it didn't really help her out. And then she's saying she's not really doing well, materially speaking. Well, to run for the Court of Appeals, I guess I assume that she's already a judge right now. I think she's wearing a judge's outfit in her picture. And so, since she is already a judge, the district court judges and the circuit court judges, they get paid $130,000 a year. So, maybe she's not a judge, maybe she's only a lawyer, maybe she hasn't been doing as, phenomenal as she says she has. But if she is a judge, she's making $130,000 every year. $130,000 every year. You can't relate to me anymore. You might have been a common person, but you're not a common person anymore. You are elevated above everybody, especially in the goddamn courtroom. You're sitting on the bench. You're sitting up above everybody. You literally have, all the power. You got the power to issue warrants. You have the power to throw people in jail for contempt. You have the power in Breckenridge. They assumed they had power to take drug tests if you showed up late, even though they were late. So you have a lot of power, and you have a lot of money. $130,000 is a nice chunk of change. So you have power, and you have wealth, and in over 4 years, right, you build up a reputation that you become an institution unto thyself. So if she's a judge, then she needs to know that she's not a common person. The one thing that I like, there's 2 things I like. She's saying, hey, I'm a good person, and she just needs to evolve or change, how she looks at it. I don't want you to sit there and pretend that you're a common person when you're clearly not. What I wouldn't mind is that you wouldn't forget that you came, where you came from. You're still Jenny from the block, right? So you know where you came from, Jacqueline Caldwell. You never forget where you came from. And how do you, go back to your roots? Do you visit the poor people and you say, hey, this is, where I came from? That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear that you're still a common person. I want to hear that you are you're one of the elite, but you're always going to fight for the common people as if they are the elite, or, whether you have power and wealth. The whole point of the court system is to institute justice. Okay, so I got all the responses to Jacqueline Caldwell's answers to Ballotpedia. She did answer them pretty, in full and articulately. What would be your top 3 priorities if elected? A commitment to issuing opinions in a timely manner, particularly in those cases dealing with the care and custody of a child, which are supposed to be expedited. A commitment to integrity and ethics. The appellate courts in particular should be seated with judges who do not promote self-dealing and even avoid the appearance of self-dealing. A commitment to be a full-time serious judge who does not delegate the actual work of rendering a decision to clerks or staff. What areas of public policy are you personally passionate about? I'm personally passionate about the safety, security, and well-being of children involved in the legal system. This includes children involved in high-conflict divorce and custody cases, children involved in the juvenile justice system, and particularly children who come into the legal system from dependency, neglect, or abuse actions. What characteristics or principles are most important for an elected official? Integrity, empathy, and perseverance. What qualities do you possess that would make you a successful office holder? First, I love the law and the nuance of analyzing facts and applying the law within the confines of the statutes, regulations, and case law. I am a hard worker who understands that behind every case there is a person or persons whose life is essentially on hold until the court makes its ruling. I know the importance of working effectively and diligently with the end in mind of applying the law equally to all parties. I am an experienced appellate attorney, and I understand that ensuring correct ruling are issued in trial courts is fundamental to a sound system. What do you believe are core responsibilities for someone elected to this office? To ensure that the trial courts are following the rules, processes, and procedures that are set out by statute to ensure that every defendant or litigant gets their fair day in court. What legacy would you like to leave? I would like to leave a legacy of bringing a serious, ethical, and diligent work ethic to the courts every day. Why are you running for this particular court seat? Our current Court of Appeals panel is underrepresented with judges who have significant and in-depth knowledge of family law. Of the three general categories of cases, criminal law, general civil law, and family law, more cases are appealed from family law actions than any other category of cases, and that number continues to grow. The appellate court panel is well represented with former district and circuit court judges and lawyers with corporate or government background. However, lawyers with significant family law experience are only minimally represented on the panel. So I guess she's a lawyer, not a judge. Okay, so then maybe she is actually struggling more than a judge. She's running against Michael Caperton, and both Michael Caperton and Jacqueline Caldwell both won this primary, which I don't even, why were their names on the ballot? It just seems like, I don't know if it's, I'm not sure how it's done, but apparently there's an election, there's two candidates, they both won, and they're both going to be voted upon in November. So her election does still continue. If you are not a sitting judge, do you have previous judicial experience? Do you believe it's important to have that kind of experience for this judgeship? I am not a sitting judge. Okay, she's just a lawyer, so maybe she isn't as privileged as I had assumed she was. While I think it perhaps can be helpful to have previous trial court experience to serve on an appellate court, I do not think it is necessary and can and often is detrimental. It is imperative to an appellate court that corrections or reversals are issued on the ruling of the trial court because there is an actual legal error, not because you may have ruled differently if you were the trial judge. And so when you go to appeal, you can't appeal the verdict. You have to appeal that the court case wasn't fairly administered. And then as the appeals court, then you say whether or not you think the error is right. So I think explaining civil procedure, how a fair trial is run, is totally, would be beneficial for the people of Kentucky. Do you believe it's beneficial for a judge to have previous experience in government or politics? To the extent that it contributes to a judge's life experience, it can be beneficial. However, not necessarily more beneficial than a judge who has a background or experience in public interest law, criminal defense, or any other area of practice. What is more beneficial is a judge who, regardless of their background, does not forget that real lives are impacted by their decisions and also their indecision. What is your primary concern about today's legal system in your state? The lack of full and equal access to the legal system of all citizens. There has always been and continues to be a real lack of equal access for poor people. Oh my God! I think Jacqueline Caldwell just won me over. Her first answer is the fact that she rushes out to tell me that corporal punishment is okay. So you can hit the kid, but just don't leave any scratches or bruises, right? Leave no evidence. As long as you abuse your kid without leaving any evidence, then that is legal in Kentucky law. That worried me somewhat. It's her interpretation of the law, and maybe that's correct. Well, what about, human rights? There's assaults, and then there's aggravated circumstances. If you're robbing somebody and you use violence, then the charge, gets upped. But apparently for adults, you're not allowed to assault any adults, but, little tiny innocent children, you can hit their little bodies over and over again, and that's totally fine and dandy. So that worried me a little bit. Then when I asked her about Kentucky law and she didn't tell me, what her, not judicial philosophy is, I want you to define Kentucky law. And she never defined Kentucky law. She didn't tell me if common law is respected. In Colorado, there is no common law. And so she didn't tell me if common law is a part of it. In those explanations, she says she uses case law, which is a lot of, Supreme Court decisions. So that's not just Kentucky law, KRS, the code, and the U.S. Constitution and code, but that's also, precedent. She believes in precedent and how other cases were determined. So she believes in case law, too. So that would be in addition to that which I had added. I mentioned several things, and I said, did I miss anything? I mentioned Supreme Court decisions, federal and state constitutions and the code, federal and state, and those were the 6, documents, or the 6 main bodies of where law comes from. But she also adds case law. And so case law isn't benchmark Supreme Court decisions. Case law is essentially just how, different cases have been solved throughout Kentucky, whether it's trial court, appeals, or Supreme Court. So I like Jacqueline Caldwell. I hope you actually go out and vote for Jacqueline Caldwell. I think because she's a lawyer, she's probably closest to the common people than any of the judges. I'm not sure about this Michael Caperton. I could probably find out something about Michael Caperton, but a lot of Ballotpedia, a lot of Wikipedia and Ballotpedia, they're good, but they're like slightly off, and that slightly off, it's not good enough. You need to give me a comprehensive view, right? So I knew that there was 4 judge races that was going on, and 2 of the judge races, there was an actual winner between the 5 that were running. So Justin, somebody, and so there were 2 that was listed on the Secretary of State, but then there were 2 other judge races that wasn't a part of the Secretary of State's, little election results webpage. So, clicking on Michael Caperton here, waiting for it to load. So yeah, Michael Caperton is a judge. It says he's a candidate for Division I judge of the Kentucky Court of Appeals 3rd Appellate District. Caperton is running in the general special election on November 5th, 2019, after advancing from the primary on May 21st, 2019. So both Michael Caperton and Jacqueline Caldwell won the primary. There's only 2 candidates. So anyways, maybe it's just to do it twice, just to, So Caperton is a judge of, it would be interesting to see how many votes they actually got. Caperton is a judge of the 27th Circuit Court. So he's a circuit court judge. The district court judge is under circuit court. Circuit court is, your big stuff, and your district court is your little stuff. Both are trial courts, but circuit court, you get paid more, and you have more power, and you decide more of the important issues. So he was elected to the 27th Circuit Court in 2016. He served as a district court judge from the 27th Judicial District from 1994 until his election to the Kentucky Court of Appeals in 2007. He served in that position from 2008 to 2014 when he lost his bid for re-election. So that's interesting. For the longest time, he was a district court judge from 1994 until 2007. So, that's 13 years he was a district court judge, and then he's elected to the Kentucky Court of Appeals in 2007. So now he's an appellate judge, so it's actually above circuit court for the next 7 years. But then 2014, he was dumped. And then he went ahead and got elected in 2016 to the circuit court, and now as a circuit court judge, he's aiming again for the Kentucky Court of Appeals. So he's been a judge for a long-ass time. He can't say he's common man. Michael Caperton is not a common man. He's the elite. Does he know where he come from? Did he come from, nappy roots, or did he actually have a nice, comfortable life his entire life? So I think this looks good for Jacqueline Caldwell and looks really bad for Michael Caperton. Michael Caperton has not completed the Ballotpedia's Candidate Connection Survey. So this is a major race. This has a whole bunch of people that's involved. So since this is such a high position, the Court of Appeals race is going to have 20-something counties that's going to participate. Wayne County, Whitley County, Washington County, Taylor, Russell, Rockcastle, Pulaski, Nelson, Monroe, Metcalf, McCreary, Marion, Lincoln, Leslie, Lee, Laurel, Knox, Jackson, Greene, Girard, Estill, Cumberland, Clinton, Clay, Casey, Bell, and Adair County. How many was that? I'm going to go back and, list it for your county. If it's not your county, then you don't even have to worry about this. But that's a big chunk of Kentucky that needs to pay attention to this high-level position, and I never hardly see any scrutiny for any of these judges' position, Supreme Court, Appellate, District, Circuit Court, or otherwise. So, Adair, Bell, Casey, Clay, Clinton, Cumberland, Estill, Girard, Greene, Jackson. 10. Knox, Laurel, Lee, Leslie, Lincoln, Marion, McCreary, Metcalf, Monroe, Nelson. 20. Pulaski, Rockcastle, Russell, Taylor, Washington, Wayne, Whitley. 27 counties out of Kentucky's 120 are going to vote between Michael O. Caperton of London, Kentucky, and Jacqueline M. Caldwell of Cox's Creek. So you have a lot of information with Jacqueline M. Caldwell. She's going around visiting people. She's answering her Facebook. She has a Facebook page. She isn't a judge, has never been a judge. So in a way, she probably is, as close to the common people, way closer than Michael O. Caperton. Now, you could be part of the elite. The Kennedys were part of the elite, but they fought for the common man. And so that's really good politics also. So I'd like to hear some of that kind of talk coming out of Michael O. Caperton. She even mentioned poor people. She said poor people don't get a fair shot. So those are some great answers, Jacqueline Caldwell. And I hope you keep talking about, the interpretation of the law, how you're going to run things, civil procedure, what's a fair. What are the errors in trial court? What are the errors in trial court that you as an appeals judge would say that entire, trial is now null and void? That's the most important question, actually, when it comes to the appeals court judge. What are the errors in trial court? Remember this, Kentucky, because I'm not going to ask. You're going to have to ask her. I guess I could try to ask her, but, I'm in Colorado, so this is your election. This is your candidates. But what are the errors that you would, nullify a trial court verdict over? What are the errors? So if you didn't have a lawyer, if you were, what are the different circumstances that would, for her to null and void it? So, yeah, Jacqueline Caldwell, Kentucky, go vote for her. Michael O. Caperton doesn't seem to be really connected with anybody on the internet, so that tells me something. And I really like Jacqueline M. Caldwell, Cox's Creek now, so go vote for her.